This is George Dionne of Metal Express Radio, and I'm here with Michael Des Barres of Michael Des Barres and the Mistakes. How you doing, Michael?
Well, I'm making mistakes constantly. I always have, so that's why we called it. We've only done half a dozen gigs, but I just thought it was such a kind of interesting word, to use at this time of our lives. Because, to be perfectly candid with you and your audience, I swear to God, most of the things that I've done that have, been cool have been mistakes.
Okay. I could see that.
What I thought was difficult was going to be difficult or something, and that I would make mistakes, I work all the harder. But the thing about this band is that they're all so amazing. They're all on everybody's records. They're those kind of guys. They're not a young bunch of rock and rollers who I have explored with before doing projects, but these guys have been doing it forever. And I just wanted to do a couple of live gigs that really, I think, resurrected that rock and roll music from England in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which was just unabashed, and it was Faces, it was Humble Pie, and it was Stones In, it was rockin', and we just all fell into place, when we first realized. I said, okay, you're 17, you're in your bedroom, and you're listening to Steve Marriott, let's go. And everybody went, yeah, let's do that. And it was just, and I think the exuberance of the EP is just that. It's got like a lot of, it's very relaxed and it's rocking, and clearly those guys are enjoying themselves. And that's the sort of records I've wanted to make, over the last 150 years I've been doing it.
Well, it sounds like you're having a blast on live at the Hi-Hat. It sounds like, you have the energy of your younger self there, too.
Well, rock and roll has always been a sort of a shot of vampiric blood. It gives me the balls to go out there, and I don't know. I know a lot of my contemporaries have, brought their songs down a key, and I'm sure you're aware of that. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So it's easier for them to sing and stuff, or they're even lip syncing to stuff in some cases, which we won't even get into. But, for me, my voice has gotten stronger, I think, over the years, because I am a health fanatic. I have been sober almost 40 years now of heroin and alcohol and cigarettes and all of that stuff that kills you. And more importantly, it makes you fat, which is, to me, intolerable. Yeah. But I base my happiness on my weight, So, I got power. I can do that still, yeah.
You put the live EP out on October 15th. Did you intend to always put out this release, or was this a result of the COVID lockdowns?
What happened was, it's a great question. I record everything I've ever done because I can. So yep. I do. And that was our second gig that we'd ever played. So I wanted to and it had that freshness. I could tell at the sound check. So I got my guys to come in and set it up, and it just so happened that it was as good as it sounds. No overdubs there at all. That's exactly what you hear, what they heard, the audience. And it was packed, and it was a small club, and that's what I began. That's how I began this stuff. This is not Live Aid. This is 200 kids sweating, and not kids, it's all ages, but who love that sort of music. So, it was done before the crisis, and I had it in my archives, but when I realized that there's no live music, and I listened to that, and I thought, you know what, let's just do this. And I hooked up with this punk label in San Francisco, terrific Die Laughing Records and Golden Robot Records, and we agreed to put it out. And I've got a lot of stuff, a lot of live stuff, which I'll probably put out again, given the dreadful circumstances that we find ourselves under.
Absolutely. Were these 6 tracks the full set you did that night?
Oh, God, no. No. We played for like 17 hours. It's no. There's a couple of bands we played for. So there's a lot of Silverheads and detective stuff, and a lot of my stuff that I've done with Steve Vincent. It's a lot of different music. And we would jam anything. I would call out a song we'd all play. We've all played "Stay With Me" 1,000 times. Or "Boom Boom," Johnny Hooker, or any of the great rock and roll songs. All of those bands in the mid-'60s, late '60s, when I came along, had the same set list, including The Who.
Right.
And as you know, any aficionado of rock and roll knows that there was a playlist of, the Shirelles and Muddy Waters, and then they began to write in the middle '60s. Townsend appeared, Ray, Sir Raymond, and they said, oh my God, there's literate stuff here. And things grew, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to go back to that humble pie world, and the Faces world, and the Stones thing, and just try and do that, in the way that I remember. And then I look back at all of the shit that I've done, and I thought, wait a minute, it's all the same. It's all the 3 chords.
Sure.
It's all 3 chords, bluesy, rock. It's just how you feel it. It's not even how you play it. You don't have to be a genius to play this music. You just have to believe it.
You know what? You're absolutely right on that. I used to be in a band, and I'm not the greatest singer in the world, but I'm a good entertainer. I believe that I'm a good entertainer. And people always came up and said, you're such a good singer. I'm like, I'm not a good singer, but I believe that I am, and I make you believe that I am.
But so does Mick.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, good, we have to describe what good means. As an actor, I don't think of myself as a good actor. I'm in that moment. I am that person. I am Murdoch. I am that funny guy on Seinfeld. I mean, it's not pretense, I'm not pretending.
Right.
I can somehow, conjure up that consciousness where people believe it, like you just said, so eloquently, which is people come up to you after the show and say, well, that was pretty fucking cool. You're a great singer. And you go, no, I'm not. The only thing I would tell you is never say, no, I'm not.
Yeah, that's right.
Just say, thank you. Thank you so much. Bless you. Yes. If you want to buy this right now, it's $2.
That's right.
Because you see, that's what I'm trying to get at is you don't have to be, this is to you youngins, and normally I would say I'd never give advice because I'd never listened to advice, and I did pretty good, The thing is that, just to believe in yourself and your comrades.
Absolutely.
That's that, and then enjoy yourself, and if you enjoy yourself, they will too.
Exactly. In keeping with kind of that 60s, 70s vibe, you're going to be releasing this EP on vinyl next year. Are you a big fan of vinyl records?
I'm a huge vinyl fan. I mean, I wrote a song called Crackle and Hiss. After our chat, perhaps you can listen to it on YouTube. And it is a dedication to vinyl. And the chorus is, Crackle and Hiss feels like the taste of your first kiss. That's how important vinyl is to me. And I'm on the board of the Making Vinyl, which is an incredible organization which, drives the idea of vinyl into the marketplace. And it's gone up. It goes up every year. How much vinyl is gotten, by youngins and by collectors. And it's growing. And I believe that when you drop that needle and you hear that crackle and hiss, it's a whole other ballgame.
Are you planning on a full album with the Mistakes, or are they more of a live project thing for you?
I think more of the live thing. Because to be candid, I'm not a Zoom guy. I don't want to make records on a fucking Zoom.
I don't blame you.
Maybe I should do Zoom and just absolutely subsidize Johnny Hooker's Boom Boom. Maybe that would be it's funny. But Zoom, no, I can't do that. I individualize. Okay, man, you do that, and then send it to me, and then I'll send it to Paul, and Paul will send it to Lawrence, and Lawrence. That's not what I do. Rock and roll. It's not. I can't do that. So, live if that ever happens again. But, my documentary's been so successful that I've been approached to do a live evening of my life.
Yeah.
and with an acoustic, and I'll sing and play clips and take questions, and because it's a documentary crosses the centuries, and there's an awful lot there, and I'd love to do that. I'd love to incorporate my acting vibe and the theatricality of music in one wonderful evening, and that's what I would like to do next.
I actually watched your documentary last night.
Great.
Who Do You Want Me to Be? And whose idea was it for the documentary?
Josh Weinstein, who directed it and conceived of it. The interesting thing is, over the years, I've done 100 hours of American television.
Yep.
And a few of them was with Josh as a writer and a director. A writer and a producer. And after a couple of shows we'd done together, and you know how it is, you get to talking to people because there's so much waiting around,
Yeah.
waiting for the lights and all of it. So he we had a lot of very in-depth conversations and about film and theatre and one's career. And he said, I'd like to explore a documentary with you. Would you be okay with that? My one caveat would be that I'd, fuck off and let me do it. And I said, you bet. So for 4 or 5 years, I never looked at a frame. I was never there with Don Johnson or Gabriel or Josie when they were giving their interviews.
Yeah.
I never went to any of that. I never looked at a foot of film. And then came that day where one went to a screening room and sat in the middle of it and watched it alone. And, wept. I mean, it was a very emotional thing for me to see my first wife, who passed away a few days after the film had been released, my son, Miss Pamela, my current wife, Britta, my dear friends. I mean, you can imagine what that was like.
Right.
That was very, very moving. But the thing is that it's so funny. There's so many funny things that happened to me that just fell in my lap. And certainly a couple of human beings fell in my lap too. But that's another story. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm just so grateful that 250,000 people watched it. It's pretty heavy.
Oh, it was definitely interesting. I learned a lot about you because I would classify you as the underrated rock star. Like everybody, I think a lot of people know Michael Des Barres, but I think sometimes they don't know for what.
Well, that's where I've got a specific place.
Yeah.
In the pantheon of bullshit, which is the title of my book.
There you go.
I'm kidding. But, underrated. Here's the thing about ratings. Who's doing the rating and who gives a fuck?
Right.
Essentially. I mean, a lot of people don't rate Sting or Prince, and yet they rate, bands that are in their hometown. I've always argued against the notion of ratings.
Yep.
And I've never felt that was important. What's important is to do the work and do it with love and freshness and fun and humor and concentration. All of those things, I would be number one.
Well, you've been around for 50 years.
I have, and I've given everything I've got, and I still do. And you say that I'm singing the same as I do on this record. You fucking right I am. And, I'll be 120 going, wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say to you, and I'll be in that key.
Damn right.
120 in a whole old rock stars, But in terms of underrated, overrated, I don't care about that. I've had such love from people, man, over
Absolutely.
the years. It's enough for me, baby,
Was there anything cut from the documentary that you wish they kept?
Oh, my God, there was hours and hours of it. I don't recall. All I know is he did an amazing job. Because when you see these things, a lot of these documentaries that you see, there's no corroboration of an event. By that I mean, at Live Aid, I was at Live Aid. There I was. So therefore, Josh found people that saw it, and I was very good friends with Don Johnson. Don Johnson, a lot of things that happened in my life, in my childhood, my mad childhood. He went over to England, got the photographs of the schools, spoke to the people that I talked about, including my first wife, and so on. So there's a great corroboration throughout that movie. It's the truth.
Right.
So often there's some, glossed up thing, and there's none of the tragedy, none of the difficulties, none of the searching or the ups and the downs. Well, I find the downs a lot more interesting than the ups.
Sure.
Because if you can get through it, whatever it is, your audience knows what I'm talking about. If you get through the downs, then the ups are so much higher.
In the documentary, you told a story about getting tossed out of a recording studio when you busted in on a session with the Rolling Stones. Did you ever get a chance to apologize to them?
Yes, but it wasn't really an apology. It was, how could you not have me sing? Are you crazy? And, I said that to Mick when we did that movie together, we did The Man from Elysian Fields, in which he was so brilliant.
Yep.
And we were playing gigolos, whores, basically.
So it's a tough role to kind of get into then.
Yeah, and I said, well, we both, but it was a funny night, man. It was just one of those cocaine nights, and they were actually rehearsing or auditioning guitar players.
Yeah.
And I got up there and started to sing Jumping Jack Flash. It was just get him out of the studio now. And I did, But it was a magnificent moment in my life and captured, I think, pretty well in the movie.
So towards the beginning of the documentary, it paints the picture of you when you were younger and you just wanted to be a star. You wanted to be famous. Now, during those years, it wasn't exactly easy to achieve that status. But today, it seems anyone with a camera can be famous. You can be famous by posing in bikini photos on the internet. You can become famous for playing video games on YouTube. I could become famous from this interview with you if we both say the right thing. What do you think about instant celebrity of today?
I don't think about it, but I will answer your question. When I started back in the 18th century, doing this shit, I realized that I had no mother or father.
Yep.
Let that sink in for just a second. I had no parents. I was shuffled from house to house. I was then put in a boarding school for 8 years, alone. I never went anywhere in the vacation period. I stayed in these Gothic castles where I learned and studied academia for 8 to 16. When I said in the documentary, I just wanted to be a star. I just wanted to shine bright and have people wear shades around me and love me. That's it. I don't give a fuck about who's famous today. It doesn't mean anything to me because after years and decades of doing it, it only lasts a couple of months.
That's true.
So, I've never lived off my laurels. Just get on with the next gig.
That's right.
It's a double answer to your question. When I say that I wanted to be a star, what the subtitle would be, he just wanted to be loved.
Right. You wanted to be accepted.
No, I wanted to be loved.
Just loved. Okay.
It's a big difference.
All right.
I wanted to be loved and looked after.
Because that's what
that's how I saw it. That's why I worked so hard.
Right.
Because I never had it. Nobody had ever said to me, good job, hey, try it this way. Nobody's ever said that to me.
Oh, that's too bad. I mean, you eventually found what you were looking for.
Well, it wasn't too bad. It was too good. It was because I learned how to look after myself, A, and B, when I was appreciated by people, that satiated that desire. And then I became an individualistic human, and therefore could understand that stardom is nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. Stardom is airbrushed. Stardom is a filter on your phone.
How did you feel as far as being loved? How did you feel when your son was born? Because I know when my son was born, I can't even say I've ever had that kind of love.
Well, I think you don't mean that, because if you experience love, then you are capable of loving everything. The love that you have for your son is a conduit and a door that you go through to the world of love. I can tell you that even if it's underneath the surface, that your love for your son has influenced your love for other things.
Right.
But you don't know it. But what you do feel is the real, true love. There's my kid. Humans are incredibly narcissistic. If you can think that the first thing that you realize you love, you made, then you have to explore that concept.
Right. I guess what I meant was...
mine. I love him more than anything because I made it. But then hopefully it expands from there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I've obviously loved things before, but it just, the way that it made me feel, the way it made me, it changed my look on life. It took me from that narcissistic 22-year-old to there's stuff bigger than I am.
Yeah. It does open up a whole other universe when you stop thinking about yourself. The problem with that whole stardom thing, too, is when you see somebody so self-engrossed, it is gross. And who wants to be that? I don't want to be that. Whenever I go out into the world, which is very rare because the lockdown in the rockdown, I would spend a lot of time with people in the market or in the streets or whatever, talking to people about whatever they wanted to talk about. Murdoch, John Taylor, whatever it was. I would talk about, and I would love that sort of gregariousness, but one can't do that anymore.
Right.
Which is interesting. But I can do it with my radio audience on Little Steven's Underground Garage, Sirius XM, Channel 21.
Good plug. We'll get to that. Let's go back to your first band, Silverhead. You guys were signed to Deep Purple's record label, and the band didn't work out for one reason or another, but what do you think was the highlight of your time with Silverhead?
But you see, what you're going to do, you see, the words that you're using are, it didn't work out. What does that mean? Does that mean that we didn't sell records? Is that what you mean?
You didn't stay together.
Nothing stays together.
No, that's true.
You learn. I was 19. So I learned how to do that, be on the road 260 nights a year for 2 or 3 years. I learned how to do it. I learned what it takes. I made great friends all over the world and met Miss Pamela and ended up living in America where I've been ever since. So my workout was enjoying what was happening, unfortunately getting addicted to narcotics. These are the reasons it didn't last. But it worked out. I hope you understand the difference.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It was a part of your life, and it was time to move on.
It's a chapter in your book,
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I was never a guy that stayed in bands very long. I just have a short attention span, I guess.
Well, your second band was Detective, and they were signed to Led Zeppelin's record label. What do you think was the highlight of your time with Detective?
It was one rainy night in Cleveland.
Okay.
The whole thing was a high point. My whole life is a high point.
You think so? That's good.
I know so.
There's in the documentary, you guys had set up a publicity photo for signing to Swan Song Records, and Jimmy Page was passed out when he arrived, and you guys laid him on the couch behind you and took the photos of you guys signing the contract. Was Jimmy mad when he found out what happened?
He was tired.
From Detective, you formed Checkered Past with Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols and the rhythm section of Blondie. What do you remember from that time?
Some amazing nights. If you've got Clem Burke and Steve Jones playing on a stage and you're with them, you're in heaven. I mean, those two are so accomplished and so naturally gifted that some nights we were the greatest band in the world. But then I would say that any band is capable of being one of the greatest bands in the world on any given night. Because the simplicity of the music, if you feel it, you are the greatest band in the world in that moment. But I just happen to have the Sex Pistols, Steve Jones, and Blondie's Clem. And it was some nights, absolutely, I felt like I closed my eyes and this is the peak of rock and roll right here tonight. I defy anybody else to play like this.
I thought the album was great. I listened to it the other day. It was great. I think it still holds up.
Yes, good. I mean, I love that Waylon, that you sure hang down this way. I think that's really clever, really good, And there's some ballsy stuff on there. It wasn't produced well, because the guy was the wrong guy. But, we were given so much money. And again, EMI was the label that I immediately christened every mistake imaginable.
In 1985, you replaced Robert Palmer in the Power Station for the 1985 World Tour and the performance at Live Aid. What was it like performing in front of such a huge crowd at Live Aid with just little time to rehearse?
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it was beyond getting nervous or, anything like that. I was just so excited to be part of it and be there. And we only rehearsed for a few days. And I was in London before that. And, I had to... What happened very briefly was I was in Texas at a couple of weeks before Live Aid with Dionne. He was making a movie. We were just hanging out, and I got a call from a promoter in New York saying, "Come to New York. There's a band that needs a singer, bad, big band." I said, "What band?" I said, "We can't tell you." So I said, "But give me a limo and a hotel, and I'll go." Okay. So I went to New York, went from the airport to the office. The office, John Taylor, Tony Thompson, sweating, looking very nervous, because millions of dollars are at stake. So I went, oh, man, it's the Power Station. They were number one at the time, right?
Right.
So they go, okay, let's go to the record plan. Let's take Robert's voice. And by the way, Robert was a dear friend of mine for years before this. Take Robert's voice off, take this cassette, get on the Concorde, go to London, meet with Andy Taylor right away. Because Andy was in London, and Andy was like the boss of that group, like the MD of it.
Yep.
And so I literally, after having got off the plane to go to the office in New York, I then went back to the airport, got on the Concorde, and went to London. No sleep in the hotel, go to the recording studio, and wait 6 hours for Andy Taylor to arrive. So I get it all set up, get it on, some like all those songs. And he comes in, with his bodyguards, and he pushes the button and says, "Go on then." And I sang a verse and a chorus of Get It On. And he hit the control button and said, "Let's go shopping." So I got back on the Concorde, went back to New York, and rehearsed for 3 days and did Live Aid. So there was my point is, I hope I'm not boring you listeners, but the point of the story is anything can happen. And I was so not nervous because I look at what I had to do.
Yeah. I mean, you guys killed it that night.
Yeah, it was an amazing afternoon, we were just so ready to do it, that youthful inspiration and the rock and roll. Because we was really the only rock and roll band that was there. It was all Madonna and Tina and,
Right.
And New Wavy. And I remember when Dylan got up there with Keith and Ronnie Wood, and all three of them were in the wrong key for the song.
Yeah, there was a lot of mistakes at Live Aid, from what I've read.
Yeah, that's probably where I got the name for my band.
Do you still have the red leather pants?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, I have. They're actually in the Smithsonian now. But I go and see them every now and then.
So with the Power Station, you wrote and recorded the song We Fight for Love for the Schwarzenegger movie Commando. Personally, one of my favorite songs.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you like it. I love it. I think it had a lot of power. When you got Tony Thompson in the house, I could just hum over that, and it'd be spectacular. He was the greatest drummer ever, Tony Thompson. He had skills. Every night I played for 6 months with that guy.
Right.
And I would just listen to him, and I would sing to that bass drum. That would be the tutorial, this percussive brilliance, and very easy. And we kind of came up with the vibe of that song together. And then Andy, brilliant guitar player. Brilliant rock and roll guitar player. And I got that melody, and it just worked, Just one of those magic moments.
Did you plan on recording other music with Power Station at the time?
No, because it was back to Duran, and they loved Robert, and they wanted to be with Robert. And you see, the thing is that I think one of the many reasons, but they were very, very personally involved with Robert. He's a beautiful man and a brilliant writer, but he's a crooner. He's Marvin Gaye. I'm Steve Marriott. So there's a big difference. You know, our shows live for 6 months was rocking. They only had 9 songs, so, you know, they did 10 of mine. And Obsession I'd written, and that was big all over the place, so we did that. But it was a very rocking show. But they liked the funk. They like chic. They like R&B. They like that kind of music.
Right, yeah.
And he's more of a rocking guy. That's why I introduced him to Steve Jones, and then they did an album together.
Oh, it's a great album. Great album.
It's a wonderful record. And, you know, and I introduced them, and they made a record. But 2 weeks after we'd recorded We Fight for Love, I got Murdoch.
Ah, that's right. Yep.
And so MacGyver, and that was the next 5 years, you know, was being on ABC in MacGyver, trying to kill him.
9 times.
9 episodes, yeah. And then that launched my acting career, you know, because I was so high profile and I was nominated, and so I did a lot of work, you know, the next 15 to 20 years.
Do you have any other projects that you're working on?
Yes, I'm writing a musical about the Marquis de Sade.
My father went to like one of those readings where they do your past lives, and they said he was the Marquis de Sade.
Put him in touch with me. Is he still alive?
He's still alive.
Get him to call me, give me some info.
I'm not sure he remembers much.
Well, no, he would, because I would nudge him.
Yeah.
I would remind him of the various shenanigans that he got up to as a young man. And he'd go, oh, I remember that. Yeah, pass the whip, would you, darling? You know, but... No, but it's an extraordinary story. It really is. It's very rock and roll, and the score is very rock and roll.
Well, that's all I got for you today, Michael.
Well, it's been delightful talking to you.
It's been great talking to you. I'm honored to be able to speak with Michael Des Barres after all that you've done and all the things I've either watched you in or listened to you on. It's a great honor. I'm glad that you took the time for Metal Express today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Are you kidding? Thank you so much, man. We've got a lot to do, both of us, and we'll do it perfectly.